welcome back. I want to talk a little bit about immunity today. I've divided this up into two different lectures because I need you to take like a brain break in between. I have found over the years that students get them all the parts of the immune system mixed up. So I've instituted a forced break where you'd have to at least stop and start the video again. They do all have questions within them. There are 9 questions total for immunity, but I broke them up so that there are some in the first lecture video and some in the second lecture video. So speaking of questions, as always, I have a review. This one is from chapter 3. So way back when we started the course, let's talk about the kind of things that infect you. And then I want to get started. Like I said, we're going to start out with the beginning of immunity, and I'm going to focus in this video, we're going to focus on your innate immunity. These are things like your barrier defenses, the literal physical barriers that you have, and some internal cellular and chemical defenses that you have. Things like the cells that kind of target the same things all the time, and things like antimicrobial proteins, your inflammatory response that do happen inside your body, but they happen exactly the same for all humans. Video 2 is going to talk more about adaptive immunity. This is only found in vertebrates, so not everybody on planet Earth gets this, even if you are alive. These are actually probably more what you are familiar with in some ways. These are your B cells and your T cells. The reason vaccines actually work with your body's physical adaptations. And then we'll talk about those and sort of I want to sequence them, but also help you to tell the parts apart. I want to broadly go over the immune system to start out with. Your immune system is your defense against things that want to attack you. Those things are called pathogens. Pathogens are anything that cause disease, that kill human cells. In this class, I'm going to narrow them down to bacteria, which you had a question about, viruses, and then prions. I want to briefly talk about each one of them. And honestly, I'm only talking about prions because I feel like I get a lot of questions when I teach these classes in person. So I think you might have questions, and since it's difficult to ask online, I want to make sure that you have those questions answered. Bacteria, we talked about in chapter 3, they are alive. They are single-celled, normally organisms. They can form together into sort of a bacterial film, but that is still made of individual organisms working together. Some of them are good, some of them don't care about you, and some of them are bad. We talked about your microbiome, and I want to talk about this a little bit more today as well, that your gut and frankly a lot of parts of your body are inhabited by microbes and particularly bacteria, but also things like fungus and other things that actually work with you and your cells to make you function properly. Bacteria do have unique compounds in their cell walls, their protective coating around their cell membranes. You may have heard of peptidoglycan or lipopolysaccharides, which you are not responsible for identifying in this class, but maybe, especially if you've been a little bit in the medical field, that is some of the ways we use to determine the differences between bacteria. Those different compounds that they have are something we do not have inside of the human body. So your immune system can use that fact, the fact that bacteria are fundamentally structurally different than your eukaryotic cells, and they can use that to target bacteria as foreign or not you. When you get a bacterial infection, many of them can still be treated with antibiotics. Bio means alive or life. Anti means against. Antibiotics kill living things, and particularly the ones that we tend to give you, penicillins or amoxicillins or a Z-Pak. Those things target the ways that bacteria reproduce and live their lives so that they hopefully don't target any cells that you need. They may target your microbiome, however, which is part of why we want to limit you're overdoing antibiotics, and also antibiotic resistance is an issue where the bacteria inside of your body become resistant to the antibiotics, and then we can't kill them anymore. Viruses are not alive, and your book goes into a discussion at this point about how there is some debate. There is some debate. I feel like for our purposes in this class, we could just say they are not alive. They are not a cell. They do not fit with the rules of cell theory. So they don't come from cells. They don't make cells. They don't possess a cell membrane. They do have proteins. They have genetic material. Some of them have DNA, which is what you have as your genetic code. Some viruses, like the flu and COVID, use RNA as their genetic material. And many of our viruses that attack humans have a lipid covering on the top. It's called an envelope that is actually mimicking what our cells look like. And sometimes that allows the virus to hide from your cells. Herpes simplex viruses are notorious for this. They coat themselves in a lipid envelope, and when they are inside of your body is like, oh, that's just one of my cells. But it's really a virus that's hiding and waiting until you're vulnerable to attack. When you have a viral infection, antibiotics will not work because they are not alive, and antibiotics target bacteria. You need to take an antiviral, and you may have taken these if you've had the flu. Sometimes you can get from the pharmacy an antiviral at the beginning of the flu. What it does is it cuts down on the extremeness of your flu attack, and it also shortens the duration by about a day, and that may make the difference between helping your immune system fight it off well and actually wearing you out a lot. Finally, prions, they're definitely not alive. No one thinks they are. They are just misfolding proteins. And this means if they're misfolded, they have the wrong structure. And the thing is, not only are they structured wrong, so they don't do what they were supposed to do, they often do something they are not supposed to do, which is bad for your body. And they can encourage other proteins in your body to also misfold. We are learning about prions. They are still, frankly, pretty freaking scary. We don't have a treatment for them overall. We don't have an antiviral or an antibiotic for treating prions. They are fairly rare. We do have a problem sterilizing them. We have found that even extreme heat and cleaning doesn't often remove them, so they can persist in places where viruses and bacteria do not. I did not make anything except the word prions red here. I'm not really holding you this for the exam, but I do feel like this is something that comes up a lot. Bovine encephalitis, the mad cow disease, is probably your most recognizable version of this. Those are misfolded proteins in the cow's brain. If you eat cow tissue, you can actually get them yourself. You don't get mad cow disease, you'll get Creutzfeldt-Jakob disease. This is extremely uncommon. You are not going to get this. They do cause degeneration and death. We do have prion disease that is affecting deer in our region. And if you see a deer that's behaving extremely oddly, slamming its head against a tree, you need to call the police. You need to call the wildlife service, because we need to remove it from the herd, because these prions are contagious, and we don't want them to spread through the population. But it is a problem in New Jersey with some of our deer that they have a prion disease. So on to some other less stressful things here. I want to give you some words to go with the discussion here. When we talk about pathogens and how they are transmitted, I'm actually asking, how do I get my disease from one deer to the other, or from one human to the other, or from one bird to the other? She's super tweety today. It's raining and she's happy. She's been very happy for this whole summer. The mode of transmission is how that pathogen is transmitted. So something like, is it transmitted through only sexual contact or fluid contact like HIV, where you really do have to come into contact with warm human body fluids? If they've been out for a long time, the HIV itself doesn't persist. Versus COVID-19 and the flu, those are both transmitted by particles and sneezes that can remain on surfaces for a long time. They also vary in virulence. Virulence is how severe the actual disease is. HIV is pretty severe. Once you get it, you are very likely to have major immunological and life-shortening problems. COVID 19 varies widely. When the COVID 19 virus first appeared in 2020, it had a really high virulence. A lot of people died. As it has persisted and it's actually evolved in the population of humans that it lives in, its virulence has decreased a little bit, and that's partially why we are less worried about the transmission of COVID 19. It's less likely to kill you. It's still pretty good at spreading. I wanted to put in hantavirus here because it's been in the news since the spring. Hantavirus is a virus you can get from the feces and urine of certain rodents. It's not common in the northeastern United States. It is common-ish. You're more likely to catch it in the Southwest. The hantavirus has been in the news because of a couple that caught it and got it on a cruise ship. Everyone was having flashbacks from the beginning of COVID, where we first had detected cases on cruise ships and then it spread. Hantavirus is very virulent, but it's very difficult to transmit. You get hantavirus by being in close contact for a really long time with somebody who is sweating the virus out in body fluids, or close contact to rats or other rodents who are spreading the disease. It has to be long, prolonged contact. It's unlikely that if you bump into somebody on the subway that you're going to get, it's almost impossible for you to get hantavirus for it. And that's why people were less worried about hantavirus on the cruise ship than they were on COVID on the cruise ship. So words, I 10 years ago I had to define these. I think it's a good habit to stay in, but I think you know now what a pandemic is. A pandemic is a worldwide outbreak. Pan means everything. An epidemic is more localized. We might have a flu epidemic in the northeastern United States in the fall and winter, but that's not happening in Australia at that time because it's summer there. The epidemic is widespread but localized. Just so that you think about it, COVID-19 was obviously our most recent recognizable pandemic, and that persists. It is not over. HIV/AIDS has been going on for a very long time, since the 1980s. It is still worldwide influencing people's lives. The bubonic plague, the Black Plague, this is a plague pit from London. They're still digging them up all over the place as they try to expand parts of London. Cholera is one that we actually go back and forth being concerned about. You've probably talked about in other classes the Spanish flu and the Asian flu. These were worldwide pandemics that affected a percentage of the entire population of planet Earth at the same time. And so, again, as you're studying and practicing, I want you to be able to tell the difference between these two words. I am not going to ask you to describe a pandemic to me. One, I think you know. Like, you were all alive for the last pandemic, so it makes me easier. In another 10 years, I'm going to actually have to explain that to people, which is shocking. I want to ask you about how we treat different pathogens real briefly, and then talk about the lymphatic system. The lymphatic system is a system in addition to your circulatory system that also transports fluids. It does not have a pump. This picture here, I feel like it could be a little deceptive. This picture is of the gland on the heart here, not the heart itself. The heart is part of the circulatory system, and the lymphatic system takes advantage of that. But the lymphatic system alone does not have any sort of pump. It does help your blood maintain volume by returning the fluid from your interstitial fluid, where it leaked out during the heart pumps and the leaking out in the capillaries into the tissue. Your lymphatic system helps to return that to your circulatory system. But it also is a place that is highly lipid-soluble fluid in it. So it's a great place for you to transport the fats that you digest and vitamins like vitamin D and vitamin A that are fat-soluble. It also is a major place where your lymphocytes, which we have mentioned in a few times now, starting with blood, your lymph-traveling white blood cells are moving and they're maturing inside of the lymphatic system to help defend your body. I zoomed in. I know that this is probably losing pixels. This is straight from your textbook. I actually think it's not something you need to memorize, but I want to show you some pieces of it. I think that you can be unfamiliar with your lymphatic system, and it feels like to me that it's often skipped in lower level courses. Then you're introduced to it in college, like you should know this whole other system of your body. It is everywhere. It has a series of tubes or lymphatic capillaries. You might hear them called lacteal. Your book calls them lymphatic capillaries. These are the tubes that transport lymph. They do run alongside your blood capillaries because they work with your blood to help return that fluid back to your circulatory system. They're particularly abundant in your extremities, your arms, and your legs. Lymph can pool in those regions if your cardiovascular system isn't powerful enough or you're not moving around enough. You may be leaking fluid into your interstitial area, and your lymphatic system is not able to bring it back. This would be edema. It's pooling lymph. And I'm adding this in here because I don't want to send you down the road of diagnostics here, but edema is something that is telling me that either your circulatory system is not moving fluid properly or that your lymphatic system is blocked. As you move your muscles, your lymph is helped to return back to lymph nodes where the lymph is cleansed. This is zoomed in a lymph node. You can see some red blood cells and some various kinds of white blood cells in here, and here. These are, oh, that's not going to show up. Red blood cells. Your lymphatic system is moving a fluid around your lymph nodes. You are probably familiar with the ones right here. I know when I was a kid, my mom would always grab me there to see if I was getting sick. What happens there is when you are fighting off an infection, your spleen might increase in size as it starts to generate a little bit of defensive mechanisms, but very quickly your lymph nodes will too, because they're making more and generating more lymphocytes. It lets us know that your body is fighting something else. Your spleen is kind of jokingly referred to as the one organ that nobody knows what it does, but that's actually not true. I've seen a bunch of memes where they're like, even your doctor doesn't know what a spleen does. We know what your spleen does. It's in your upper left abdomen. It cleans your blood. It helps with your immune system. It really only comes up in people's discussions if there's something wrong with it. Things like mononucleosis, that's mono, which you may have had when you were a teenager, and cancers like leukemia can result in a large spleen. So that's something we look at, and particularly tenderness in that area, your upper left quadrant, is something we are concerned with you developing longer term problems. Your tonsils back here, they're not these lymph nodes right here. Your tonsils are those balls in the back of your throat, if you still have them. Even further back where you really can't see them are your adenoids. They're masses of lymph tissue that help you filter out microorganisms. For some people, they have their tonsils removed, particularly when you're very young. The surgery becomes brutal if you are older. Recovery becomes really difficult, where for children it's not so bad. They're constantly swelling, and sometimes they can swell due to repeated infections and fighting off infections. Your tonsils can swell and block your throat. If you've had your tonsils removed, that's probably why. It used to be in the 1950s and 60s that they were removed as a matter of course, but we don't do that anymore because they're part of your immune system. Your thymus gland is here, right in the middle of your chest, sitting on top of your heart. It starts out very large when you are a baby. It shrinks as you age, not just retrospectively. It shrinks remarkably while you age. It secretes the hormones where T cells, and we'll come back to them in the next lecture, T cells mature. I'm going to shortcut this description here as we go through, and I'm just going to say that T cells mature in your thymus. You do know in the back of your head that that's being caused by a hormone or a signal inside that the thymus is releasing. Your immune system has 3 lines of defense. Part of what is helping that is the lymphatic system, but more, obviously much, much more. Let me ask you about the lymph system, and then let's go on to the first 2 lines of defense. I am, during this lecture, going to talk about 2 lines of defense. I'm going to focus on your innate barriers and your cellular innate, your first and your second lines of defense. Video 2 is going to be the 3rd line of defense, your adaptive immune system. They all work together. It's not like you choose, it's not 1, 2, 3. These are all different host defenses. These are not the diagrams from your text. I like this better. I will put it in the practice document just straight up because I do think it's very helpful and it's everything we have talked about. Help you to decide what goes where. But notice how this is not one, the first line doesn't happen and then the second line. The first line is the first thing that maybe bacteria or a virus encounters, but all of these are active all the time. This is keeping your systems functioning and maintaining your homeostasis in the face of a lot of pathogens that frankly want to eat you. Your first line of defense are barriers, and I'm just going to list a bunch. I want you to look at them, and we've actually talked about them all along. I want you to look at them today as you're practicing how you're defending yourself from the outside world. Your best defense, and all living organisms have this defensive system, your best defense is making sure that those pathogens can't get in. So your skin is an amazing barrier. It's acidic, a little bit. That's good. That's why you don't want to wash it with a bunch of basic soap. It strips your skin of acids and oils and all of the protective microbes that exist on you. They keep your skin's barrier in place, and that's important for one, maintaining your skin health, but also maintaining your ability to defend yourself from pathogens. Other things that you are using as defense that you may not think about all the time are tears and saliva. Your tears and your saliva are a little bit acid. They flush things away from you. They keep things from building up. You are defending yourself with this saliva and tears that flush things out of openings in your body. Earwax protects the openings inside of your ears. Maybe it builds up a little too thick. You certainly don't want to push Q-tips back there and block up your tympanum, or your vibratory membrane that actually vibrates in time with sound waves. But your earwax is preventing bacteria from building up on your tympanum. Mucus is just awesome. It's sticky. It blocks up lots of different bacteria so that they can't get in. It's slippery. It does a lot of things to defend you against your invaders. Sneezing and coughing ejects things from you. Acid is everywhere. It's in your mouth, on your skin, in your stomach, with your digestive enzymes, but also in the vagina, in the anus. There's a little bit of acidity everywhere that there is a hole that something could enter inside of you, a bacterium or an infection. That acts as part of your barrier systems. It's supposed to be acidic because that defends against your invaders. I want to point out too, we'll talk about reproduction as one of the very last lectures we'll do. And we're going to talk about the fact that the vagina is very acidic as a defensive mechanism for pathogens. But the sperm have to get in there, right? So, and survive that trip. So one of the things that is released in the ejaculate is something that buffers or counteracts the acidity of the vagina so that the sperm can survive, but the bacteria cannot. And finally, vomiting. This protects you against things that you, and if you've ever been food poisoned, you know exactly what that feels like. But you actually have a series of, controlled by your hindbrain and your medulla oblongata, a series of things that you react to by vomiting, and that keeps it from getting into your intestines, whatever it is. And that, because once it gets to your intestines, it can be absorbed into the blood system. And all your friendly bacteria, holy moly, those guys are your friends. Mostly. I want to point out here that the old wives' cure of taking cranberry for a UTI is actually pretty good. This is very acidic. and it's why it's recommended. If you drink cranberry juice while you are having a UTI or a bladder infection, so what you're trying to do is change the acidity of your systems so that you can defend a little bit against pathogens. It's drinking acidy things. Although remember, juice is not a good source of fiber. You have your microbiomes. They either live on or in your body. They are everywhere. These are some healthy bacteria that are doing the good things for you. A lot of them protect you by this idea of competitive exclusion. If you've taken any ecology classes or environmental science, you know that our outside world, and we look at a biome or an area where organisms live, that if you have a lot of complex native organisms, sometimes invasive things can't get in. The same thing is applying to your gut bacteria and your skin bacteria. They are, if you maintain a healthy load on a complex variety of bacteria in those places that are good for you, they'll actually prevent bad guys from moving in because there's no space. Some change the environment, like the lactobacilli that we eat in yogurt. Some of them alter the environment, making it better for themselves and not so great for the bad guys. Remember, pathogens are the bad guys. Make my standard bad guy face. And some provide your vitamins. Vitamin K comes from bacteria living in your gut. They make your lives better. They allow you to clot. So there is a kind of sort of a sneaky note here that some of the bacteria that live inside of you are friendly as long as you are healthy. As soon as you become unhealthy or there is space, there's not enough competitive exclusion going on, they may flip a switch and become bad guys. So you have some things that are sort of meh, you need them, but they may turn and attack you at any moment. If you are unhealthy, you can get overload of bacteria or an overload of yeast because they're taking advantage of your lack of immunity at that point. In the news and in the media right now, and I feel like even on social media, we talk a lot about pro and prebiotics. So I want to give you the differences between them. Probiotics are, these are prokaryotes. So they're bacteria that are in dietary supplements, basically things like yogurt. A lot of you talked about yogurt in the exam too. Yogurt absolutely provides you with a huge amount of calcium, depending on the yogurt, and bacterial defenses. They help to restore the microbiota that you have. They do sell probiotic pills. I am still somewhat skeptical of them, and I'm not off the rails here because they have to move through your stomach acid. So unless they are packaged correctly, they won't make it past your stomach, and you have to take a lot of them. The recommendation is if you are healthy, you should really focus on prebiotics. It's kale. These are dietary supplements, and I want to stress many good foods that actually help create a community that is supported inside of your gut, where it encourages a lot of beneficial bacteria. And I'm going to boot back for a second. It encourages these opportunistic bacteria who might take advantage of you if you are unwell to stay friendly for you. Having a lot of fiber in your diet, having a lot of variety in your diet, having all of these, and this is just the same picture from the Mediterranean diet, but having a lot of complexity in your diet encourages complexity in your gut microbes, and that is your barrier system that prevents you from getting sick. Not eternally, right? So like everybody, you can be the healthiest person out there, and some of your answers on the exam, for sure, some of you are already have this nailed down. It's super impressive. I definitely can learn from that. But I would think that once it gets past your barrier, your body actually has other ways to defend you. So quick question about barriers, and then let's look at the second line of defense. So the second line of defense is innate and non-specific. I want to define innate at this point. Innate means you are born with it. It means that it comes with standard human. You have an innate response. Your reflexes are innate. You are born with them. They are not something you have to learn situationally. They are something that you are already come with those neurons connected to each other in the right way to have that response. Your second line and your first line, your barriers, are innate. They come with part of your genetic code. I also want to define here non-specific, which means it is not targeting a specific species of bacteria or a specific type of virus. These are targeting things that just do not belong, that definitely don't belong. These can be bacteria that your body recognizes as foreign. It can be viruses that are making proteins by hijacking your cells that are clearly not supposed to be there. These can be cells that have gone cancerous and are secreting proteins that are making you sick. Your second line of defense is inside your body and about getting rid of the things that are obviously not you. I have a list here. I'm going to go through these complement proteins. I want to point out this is complement with an E. That means that they work well with other things. Phagocytic cells, which we've actually talked a little bit about when we talked about how things get into cells, and that's why we talked a little bit about active engulfing and phagocytosis. We'll look at phagocytosis, natural killer cells, interferons, and inflammation. Inflammation is a process. Natural killer cells are cells. Phagocytic cells are cells. And interferons and complement proteins, these are going to be proteins or molecules that help keep you from getting sick. Complement proteins are like 30 different proteins that circulate around in your blood and maintain your defenses in your, and we say in your humors. Humors is the old-fashioned word for blood, but it comes up a lot in immunity. We'll talk about your humoral responses or your blood-based or fluid-based responses. They are normally inactive, meaning they are doing nothing and they aren't turned on. But when they get turned on, and they get turned on by exposure by something that does not belong to you, so they get turned on by non-self things inside of your body, could be proteins, it could be viruses, it could be anything, and then they defend you. I am not going to list 30 complementary proteins for you. If you go deeper into this, if you are interested in this, I highly recommend microbiology. There is a microbiology for non-majors, which is a 100 level course. It does have a lab. I definitely recommend if you can take it in person. It's way more interesting than online because you get to actually see a lot more different kinds of bacteria. But we also talk a lot about immunity. That may be a course that you're interested in. It could be, there's a higher level course if you've taken bio that covers way more detail of this in microbiology. But I think that what I'd like you to take home from the idea of complement proteins is they work with the rest of your secondary and tertiary, your third barrier, your third response system in immunity to make sure that cells or organisms or proteins that are in your body that do not belong get targeted by eater cells, the phagocytes, or cells that eat things. They make inflammation worse, which sounds bad, but is actually a good thing because that actually brings the rest of your immune system to come to the problem. And they actually directly kill. Lyse means to pop. They actually kill or pop anything that is invading you. So I want to highlight macrophages again. This is a process of phagocytosis. We've seen this already, and this is the real version, and this is the cartoony version. Cells who in your immune system whose job it is to eat foreign bacteria or foreign objects are called macrophages. Macro means big, phage means to eat. Here I'm referred to as macrophages too, but phage is something else, and it confuses me if I mix them up. Macrophages, they actually, when you have a wound or an infection or something invading you, they ook their way through the vascular system in spaces in the capillaries into the surrounding tissue, and then they absolutely eat whatever is infecting you. They also play a role once they eat in showing what they just ate to other cells of the immune system. They can become presenters, where they present what the invader looks like to the rest of your immune system so that your immune system can learn to recognize it. We've talked about two types of big eater cells. In the lecture on blood, we talked about neutrophils. Neutrophils are macrophages, eater cells that arrive first to fight an infection. As your body fights that infections, the neutrophils fail, they die, they burn themselves out. It's a terrible fight, and they clump together and they become pus. So you may have noticed that pus is a sign that your body has an infection. It's a sign your body is fighting an infection. The pus is actually getting rid of all the white blood cells and some of the infective agent inside of that pus. Your inflammatory response is something you are super familiar with, and I'm going to also recommend, I've attached in the module a video, it's like a cartoon version of what I'm going to talk about here from the Amoeba Sisters, who I love, and I think it's a little bit appropriate for what we're talking about. They do go into some more immune defenses, but I think it's not going to hurt you to sit and watch through the whole video. I want to send you to look at them for the inflammatory response. This is what happens when you get hurt. When you get hurt, let's say you skin your knee or you get a splinter or a little cut. Let's keep it where you're not severing your carotid artery here. This is a tiny wound, because otherwise we're going to have a whole other issue. But a little tiny wound where you've severed some capillaries, that actually, the damage itself, it will start the process of clotting. But it also calls together two kinds of cells, mast cells and basophils. When these guys arrive, they squish through the capillaries and into the injured tissue, and they release a chemical called histamines, or histamine. You've heard of antihistamines. Antihistamines counteract your histamines. Histamines, however, are something your body is using as a chemical signal to call your immune system and say, hey, we just got a wound. We're probably being invaded by bacteria. It caused the phagocytic cells to come eat up anybody that might be infecting you. It also, those histamines increase your redness. It'll turn red where your wound is. It'll feel warmer. It'll swell, and because it swells and it fills up full of lymphatic fluid, a little bit of fluid into the tissues, you'll feel pain because it's pushing against your pain sensors. This is actually good because it is asking your body, it's telling your body that it needs to bring the immune system to bear. The cells come to fight in response to this. Now, if this is too extreme, and then it can become an issue. We may give you Tylenol. We may have a cold compress. We want it to be the appropriate inflammatory response, not something that overwhelms your immune system. And we do have some infections that can overwhelm the immune system, cause too much of an inflammatory response, and then that raise in temperature can overwhelm your body before you fight the disease off. Histamines call the immune response and phagocytic cells. Histamines cause that redness and swelling, but what do the phagocytic cells do when they get it? So here's some bacteria came in on a splinter, and the mast cell and the basophils are calling that there needs help. And I don't know, it's tiny here, but this says histamines. The phagocytic cell comes and eats them up. It engulfs them, it digests them, and in many cases it might actually show like maybe this guy's hat on its outside or the suitcase and say that this is what our invaders look like, and alert the rest of the immune system to their shape. I do want to point out that a fever is an extension of this. A fever resets your thermoregulation set point. So we've talked about the homeostasis of maintaining your body temperature, 98 degrees or 36.5-ish degrees. There's a normal range between this, the Fahrenheit and Celsius. When you have an active infection, or your body thinks you do, your body changes the set point in your brain. It releases, I didn't make this red, but I think it's interesting. Pyrogens, they're a chemical, pyro means fire. They're a chemical that tells your body to raise the thermostat set point. So it's like you come home from work and you realize the house has been like 87 degrees and humid all day, and you change the thermostat. It changes the thermostat to be a more appropriate temperature to fight bacteria off. You have a fever, you're cooking the bacteria in the hope that you kill them before you kill yourself. That's why we generally don't try to lower a fever. A fever is part of your defensive mechanisms. It's part of your lines of defense. And if I immediately lower it, I cut off that defensive line for you. Now, if you have a really high fever, 107 degrees Fahrenheit, we may have to treat it, because now the fever can be more damaging than beneficial. You have some cells as well that move around your immune system. These are white blood cells. They're a type of lymphocyte, that means white blood cell, that is non-selective. So it doesn't target anything specific. It's not specific, but it does target cells that are acting completely crazy. You might have a cell inside of you that is infected with a virus. That virus cell, infected cell, is now making proteins and viruses that are inappropriate. The natural killer cells inside of your body can recognize that and cause them to kill themselves, which is a good thing. You're multicellular and we want all your cells working together. Some cancers can also be targeted by natural killer cells. Obviously, not all viruses and not all cancers can be targeted by natural killer cells, but some of the ones that you don't normally get unless you are immunocompromised are things that natural killer cells are taking care of for you. What they do is and this is straight from Wikipedia, this is a U cell that is being targeted by a natural killer cell. It binds to it, and then it releases an enzyme that tells this cell it gets holes in it, and it pops, and all its insides leak out. And that prevents it from making bad copies of itself, but also persisting making bad proteins, which can make you sick, which will make you sick. Finally, my last little bit of your complement system is interferons. When your cells are infected with a virus, they release a small signal. It's a protein called an interferon, and it tells the cells nearby that there is an imminent viral infection. Viruses hijack your cell's mechanisms. They get inside of your cell and then take over your cell and make it make virus stuff instead of you stuff. Interferons get released and tell the cells that are not yet infected to defend themselves immediately. And so you are multicellular. You lose 1 or 2 cells to the virus, but by the time the virus can spread to nearby cells, the interferons have warned them and they are harder to invade. A rise in interferons in an area of your body would tell me that you have some kind of infection that's viral and a cell is signaling. It also tells me that your cells are trying to defend themselves from that virus. I have a question for you about histamines and infections, and then we'll continue on for just one little slide. We've done the first and second line of defense, the barriers and the cell response that is not specific and innate, but there's a third line. And this third line is going to be T cells and B cells in the adaptive immune system. I am going to have you, if you can watch the Amoeba Sisters video next. I don't obviously have questions in it, but I think it's going to help build the script for you. And then come back and watch the second part of immunity, when we're going to talk a little bit about innate immunity and how your body can learn to fight off future problems. And with that, I will see you in the next video. Continue with immunity, and I guess you're doing great. All right, bye-bye.